I said, what did you do when whites were lynching black people in the South? Did you speak out? Did you share a word of goodness and mercy and God's grace? What did you do when that was happening?
In another district, there was a town and country worker who was assigned to that district for the summer to help out. When she returned to her apartment that evening, she found notes stuck all over the doors and the windows of her house. It says, "Go home, don't come back. We don't want niggers in our church." And that was the kind of highly charged environment that 50 African-American congregations were being moved into the Western North Carolina conference.
You had to be separate. You had to be at the back of the church or nowhere else in the church.
And the burning question for us in the conference was, what must we do so that our central jurisdiction brothers and sisters are received graciously in our conference? What do we need to happen?
The merger was eliminating a segregated jurisdiction in the Methodist Church. Now, in 1939, when the mergers started, they set up the central jurisdiction then, made it a total jurisdiction. By coming together, they eliminated that jurisdiction all completely and made it different. There are blacks in all jurisdictions now.
Part of that 1939 merger was the establishment of a central jurisdiction.
Central jurisdiction was a compromise. It was created in order to allow the Methodist Episcopal Church North, the Episcopal Church South, and the Methodist Protestant Church to form the Methodist Church. The black members were sacrificed in order to bring that about, and there's no other way to say it.
The central jurisdiction took all of the African American churches and put them in a separate jurisdiction.
Blacks could not have communion together with. They had to go in a separate area to have communion. That's what started some of the predominantly black denominations, is because the opportunity to separate people when even the body and broken body and shed blood of Christ could not be together and taking communion.
Even in 1939, when the church merged, most of the African American delegates voted against merger. And so the central jurisdiction was not something that we had looked forward to having.
What advantage did we have in the central jurisdiction? One of the real advantages is that we were in position to train and develop leaders, and we elected our own bishops in the central jurisdiction.
So the result of that 1939 merger was that they ended up with 6 jurisdictions. 5 of those were geographical parts of the country, and one of them was purely racial. That brings us up to the 1968 merger that was brought the UUB Church and the Methodist Church together to form the United Methodist Church.
And we didn't have that many EUB churches in Western North Carolina that it became an issue. But the abolition of the central jurisdiction was a must for the EUBs to join with us in that merger. They got us to do what we should have done on our own anyway.
The first black church that left the central jurisdiction left actually in 1956. Mitchell Memorial Church at Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
But the thing that irks me most is the fact that the church did not take leadership in abolishing segregation. The state and the government did. We didn't move until after segregation was abolished.
Churches further south in South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, those, it was 1972 before they were fully left they were no longer part of the central jurisdiction, but they were part of Southeast jurisdiction, but they were still separate annual conferences.
It has to be said that many of the black churches were no more interested in having a pastor of another race than were the white churches. And we all think interracial appointments mean sending black preachers to white churches. It works both ways. I had 20 black churches in my district, and one round of conferences I asked them how many of them would be willing to accept a pastor of another race. Only one said yes. So there was concern and anxiety on both sides, and I think understandably so.
One point I want to make there is that you're talking about black people. Did we well receive whites? You know, we are equal persons. Did we well receive them? Did they well receive us? I'd like to say we well received each other than just to say that they received us. But most of the people on the committee really wanted to see us move forward in terms of eliminating the central jurisdiction.
It was the intentions of the district leaders, many of them, and Bishop Hunt in the early years to try to make certain that those of us who had come to the conference from the central jurisdiction were very much a part of the life of the annual conference.
We were striving to be Christians and open the doors of opportunity for everybody, no matter what race or color they might be.
The noun is person. Black and white are adjectives.
We're able to share together. We was able to have meetings together. We're able to bring concerns together. We were able to understand each other, which we never had that experience before.
First of all, there was some change in integration, some change in the racial feelings about, primarily on the larger stage with the general conference, jurisdictional conference, annual conference level. Races were serving together, but they all came together because they wanted to.
You know, in the early days of merger, if you were not a pastor or a delegate to annual conference or served on some board or agency, it was very little contact and a change in the local church from Sunday after Sunday, week after week. Many members, I think, their lives were not affected very much by merger. You know, looking back, you want to certainly feel that you made some progress. And I would hate to think that that we had traveled 50 years and not made any. And I hope that, you know, for the future, that even if we have a special session of the General Conference next year and make decisions about the future of the church, that we will realize that we have faced difficult, critical times, that we didn't fully understand everything before. We split, went our ways for a while, and then we got back together. And I hope that it will inform us that we will not hastily make any decisions that we will later look back upon and you said, why in the world did they split in the 21st century? That there's some ways in which we can work this out.
It simply means that the church is striving to be inclusive and is moving in that direction, and that the